Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a major development that has caught the attention of governments and analysts across Europe. Sweden's new stand, a shift that many didn't see coming, has stunned the European Union and triggered debates about what this means for the future of the continent. In this video, we're going to break down what Sweden has done, why it matters, and how it could reshape political, economic, and security dynamics across Europe. The paragraphs will remain short, so the script stays smooth, sharp, and easy to deliver. Sweden has always been known for its balanced and measured approach in European politics. For years, the country has positioned itself as a calm voice in EU decision-making, often pushing for unity and cooperation rather than confrontation. But this time, things are different. Sweden's latest move marks a striking departure from its usual tone. The announcement came with force, clarity, and intensity, making it clear that the Swedish government is no longer willing to simply follow the flow of standard EU policy. This shift has created a wave of surprise not only in Brussels, but in all major European capitals. The reason this shift is so significant is because Sweden rarely takes such bold and confrontational positions. The country is known for compromise, diplomacy, and cautious language. But the new stand signals frustration, urgency, and a willingness to take risks. It suggests that the Swedish leadership believes the EU is not moving fast enough or decisively enough on issues that Sweden now considers critical. This is why so many analysts are describing the moment as a turning point in Sweden's relationship with the EU. The core of Sweden's new position centers on what it views as unbalanced expectations placed on member states. Sweden has hinted for months that it feels the EU is demanding more from certain countries while others avoid their fair share of responsibilities. This tension has been quietly building, and now it has reached a breaking point. Sweden's leadership decided that it would no longer remain silent or polite about it. The country is openly calling out the EU internal weaknesses, and this has left European officials somewhat unsettled. One of the biggest areas of disagreement is related to economic contributions and budgetary responsibilities. Sweden has long been one of the highest net contributors to the EU budget relative to its population. While Sweden accepts the idea of solidarity and joint financial frameworks, the government now argues that the burden is becoming uneven. They believe that wealthier members are being expected to backstop every crisis, while others contribute less or fail to meet agreed standards. This controversial claim has triggered heated debate from EU officials and other member states. Another major angle to Sweden's stance relates to migration and border security. Sweden has faced significant internal challenges related to integration, crime, and public services. For years, Swedish politicians avoided strong rhetoric on this topic, but now the government is adopting a much firmer tone. They are demanding that the EU enforce stricter border controls, streamline deportation rules, and develop a more efficient burden-sharing mechanism. Sweden argues that their domestic system has absorbed more than it can handle, and that ignoring these realities is no longer an option. Their tough language has sparked both support and criticism across Europe. Part of what makes Sweden's new approach so shocking is the timing. Europe is facing geopolitical pressure on multiple fronts. The war in Ukraine continues to reshape security strategy. Energy supply concerns remain unresolved, and economic instability is still affecting everyday citizens. At such a moment, the EU expected member states to push for unity. Instead, Sweden has stepped forward with a confrontational position that exposes internal disagreements. This puts additional pressure on EU leadership to respond quickly and avoid appearing weak. Sweden's recent entry into NATO has also influenced this shift. Becoming a full member of the alliance required Sweden to adopt a more assertive defense posture. This means new military commitments, new regional responsibilities, and stronger partnerships. As a result, Sweden's political mindset has changed. Security matters are now front and center in Swedish policy. And with this change has come a firmer tone in international discussions. Sweden is no longer approaching EU decisions from a purely diplomatic angle. It is now speaking as a security-driven state. This transformation is part of what shocked EU leaders. The Swedish government is also responding to domestic pressure. Recent polls show growing frustration among Swedish citizens regarding crime, economic strain, and the perceived inefficiency of European institutions. The government can no longer afford to appear passive or overly cooperative. Instead, they are taking a stand that appeals to voters who want leadership that prioritizes national stability and accountability. By challenging the EU, Sweden is signaling to its citizens that it is ready to protect national interests, even if it means causing friction in Brussels. This bold move raises an important question. Is Sweden positioning itself for a long-term shift in its relationship with the EU, or is this a temporary pressure tactic? Analysts are divided. Some believe Sweden wants serious reform within the EU but does not intend to weaken ties. Others argue that Sweden's tone suggests a deeper frustration that could lead to more confrontational steps in the coming years. What is clear for now is that Sweden has sent a message that cannot be ignored. The EU reaction so far has been cautious. European officials acknowledge Sweden's concerns, but warn against unilateral decisions or rhetoric that could destabilize unity. Behind closed doors, however, reports suggest that many in the EU leadership did not expect such strong language from Stockholm. Some fear that Sweden's bold approach might inspire other member states to adopt similar positions. If that happens, the EU could face a chain reaction of internal conflicts that weaken its ability to act collectively. Sweden's stand also affects its relationship with neighboring Nordic countries. Traditionally, the Nordic region has been united in its diplomatic and economic goals. But Sweden's sudden shift has created a ripple effect. Norway and Finland are watching closely, while Denmark is evaluating how this new Swedish tone might influence regional cooperation. It's possible that Sweden's move will encourage more assertive policy statements from other Nordic governments who feel similar pressures. Another area impacted by Sweden's stance is the EU long-term strategic planning. The EU has major goals related to digital transformation, climate transition, energy independence, and global competitiveness. Sweden is now questioning whether these long-term agendas are being managed effectively. The government argues that overly ambitious policies without proper implementation risk harming member states' economies. They want the EU to prioritize realistic timelines, consistent enforcement, and measurable accountability. This critique hits at the core of EU planning and has sparked intense debate. Sweden's shift is also connected to concerns about rising political polarization in Europe. Many countries are facing elections in the next few years, and internal political tensions are growing. Sweden's government is concerned that if the EU does not address key issues, it could fuel extremist movements across the continent. By taking a strong stand now, Sweden hopes to force the EU to reevaluate policies before public frustration becomes unmanageable. This strategic calculation reflects a desire to stabilize long-term European politics rather than simply criticize. International observers are also paying attention. Non-EU countries, especially those with trade or security ties to Sweden, are analyzing the potential impact of this shift. Some believe Sweden's move could make the EU more adaptable by forcing difficult conversations. Others believe it will lead to internal paralysis at a time when global challenges require unity. The uncertainty surrounding Sweden's long-term goals adds to the complexity of the situation. Another element of Sweden's position involves regulatory pressure on industries. Swedish officials argue that the EU regulatory environment is becoming too heavy, too slow, and too disconnected from technological realities. They claim that excessive regulations are preventing businesses from competing globally. Sweden wants the EU to streamline its decision-making and support innovation more aggressively. This argument has gained traction among business communities across Europe who feel similarly constrained. Sweden's call for accountability is also aimed at the EU internal institutions. For years, Sweden has quietly raised concerns about transparency, bureaucratic delays, and inefficiencies within European administration. This time, however, Sweden is raising its voice openly. They are insisting that EU institutions must reform themselves if they expect member states to support major projects and financial commitments. This level of direct criticism is uncommon and has put EU officials on the defensive. One of the surprising outcomes of Sweden's new stand is the wave of public debate it has triggered. Social media is full of discussions, arguments, and reactions. Some people praise Sweden for speaking openly about issues that many believe have been ignored. Others accuse Sweden of destabilizing European unity during a difficult time. Regardless of the opinions, one thing is clear: Sweden has captured the attention of Europe, and the conversation is not quieting down anytime soon. The new Swedish stance has also opened a conversation about the future structure of the EU. Questions are emerging about whether the EU needs more flexibility, more decentralization, or new decision-making mechanisms. Sweden argues that the current structure places too much pressure on certain countries while allowing others to avoid responsibility. Whether or not the EU will consider structural reform is still unclear, but Sweden's challenge has put the issue at the forefront. Sweden's leadership has emphasized that their goal is not to damage the EU but to strengthen it. The government insists that tough conversations are necessary for long-term stability. They believe that ignoring problems will only create deeper divisions later. This approach reflects a belief that a stronger EU requires honesty, accountability, and fairness. However, the way Sweden is delivering this message has created tension that cannot be easily dismissed. European leaders now face the challenge of responding to Sweden without escalating conflict. Diplomats are working to find common ground, and private negotiations are expected to intensify. Whether Sweden decides to soften its tone or double down on its demands will be critical in determining what happens next. The next few weeks and months will reveal whether this is a moment of temporary friction or the beginning of a deeper shift in European politics. Sweden's bold new stance has undeniably changed the conversation in Europe. It has exposed frustrations that have long been simmering beneath the surface. It has forced EU leaders to confront difficult questions about unity, accountability, and responsibility. And it has shown that even countries known for calm diplomacy can reach a point where strong action becomes necessary. As we continue to watch this situation unfold, one thing is certain: Sweden has made its point loud and clear. The EU cannot continue with business as usual. Whether this leads to reform, conflict, or a new era of cooperation remains to be seen. But for now, Sweden's decision has shaken the political landscape of Europe and ensured that the debate will continue. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more updates on major global developments, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Sweden's move has stunned the EU, but the story is far from over. Stay tuned for more.